Well, greetings all. I'm glad that you stopped by once again. My last video I had brought out a little bit about for the elect's sake, the days would be shortened. I'd like to elaborate on that here in Matthew chapter 24. But the main point that I'm trying to bring out, and I hope I can do it in detail, so that everybody can see that this is, one of the worst deceptions, I think, that is come about in most of churchianity and religianity out there. It's something that even atheists, will tell you. Out of all the things they haven't read, they know, basically this scripture where even the tithe collectors out there in your church, if you're going to one, that you're paying, or you're paying online to, certain tithe collectors that are telling you that our King said that he don't know the hour that comes. Okay, that he's going to be coming. Excuse me, something popped up. This recorder is a little bit freaky. And I've been awake for quite some time and had a harrowing time on the Day of Atonement that just passed. I was afflicted greatly by the ailments and the diseases and such, the horrible things that come on those that were trying their very best to keep the Day of Atonement, and they had to suffer the things that are of this world. But anyway, in Matthew 24:34, it says, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." Now I'm going to read this letter to you as it's written to the 144,000. I'm one of that number. I didn't choose to be. I didn't choose to follow our King and get my butt whooped since before I was born. Okay, so I didn't choose this way. I didn't choose to be a pauper. Okay, but I do choose not to charge you for anything that I'm bringing forth. And what our King is saying, let me do this color scheme again for some reason. But when our King returns, he knows when he's going to return. He never once said he didn't know when he's going to return. From verse 34 all the way up to almost the very beginning, our King is explaining in part, and I'll show it to you. We'll be skipping a bunch of this for time's sake. But he's saying that all these things, according to the questions that the disciples asked, I think it was in verse 2 of this, says, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all those things take place." In other words, our King is not going to return until all those things come to pass. That was the end of that statement, basically. And then he has this change of thought, which is in the third part what was asked by the disciples, as in the end of the age. When is everything going to be destroyed? The heavens and the earth to be remade again. They knew these things. Even Kefa talks about it in his, in his letters. And the King stops after he says all them things, and I'm going to show you in this letter so you can read it and understand that our King knows exactly when he's coming, or he couldn't have told you those things. He'd have been stupid. Why would he even bring these things up if he didn't know when he's coming? He changes thought here, and he talks about the end of the age. It says, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away." Yes, heaven and earth will pass away, but he's not talking. All those things are going to take place also before the heavens and the earth pass away. And he said in Matthew 5, verse 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, all the way through, that until the heavens and the earth pass away, not one single jot or tittle from the law will pass away from the law. So these things are still in effect, and he's showing you. Heaven and earth will pass away. Yes, they will, but the law won't. But my words will by no means pass away. He became the every living word. Can you please see this? He becomes the every living word. Part of him is these laws and commandments. If you don't keep the laws and commandments, you're taking a piece of the Messiah and throwing him away. And then yet claiming that you love him. You know, you're ripping off his arm, for crying out loud, and beating him with it, thinking that he's going to take it just the way you are after you rip off his arm. But my words will by no means pass away. That's the end of the thought. That was a subject change, complete subject change, and it's verified by the very next word in Matthew 24:36. But what? Going back up into the beginning of all that was just shown to get to this point. Then he starts telling you what the days are going to be like when he returns and how to act accordingly to it. So it's like three separate thoughts going on here. And you're not going to be able to see where I'm starting off. You probably won't be able to see it till I get down around verse 10 or 9 or 10 or something. So I'll try to keep it up there so that you can see. But please, if you would like to pray, please do so. And then I'll explain this letter so that you can read it from now on and know that, you know, if no one knows, see, the problem is when someone tells you they don't know, well, you got to find out. It's a human nature that you got to find out for them. And if our king didn't know the day or the time or the hour, why is it everybody's in the prophecies now telling you that he's going to return at this time and that time? You know, I mean, go bet on the horses, for crying out loud. If our king don't even know it like most y'all are preaching, why are you trying to double guess him? Just don't know. Get your nose out of the prophecies and start keeping the laws and the commandments. Everything's going to come to pass anyway. Whether you know of it or not, it's still going to come to pass. He just said it. We just read it, didn't we? Right in the beginning of this, the prelude. And if you would, you know, like to pray, please do. I'm going to pray that your minds be opened, and I'm going to do it now. Oh, Father Yahweh, righteous are you in all things that you have done, all things you have spoken, and all things that you have commanded us through your righteous Son. We praise you. We thank you, Yahshua, for all the sacrifices you made for us. I pray that we may be the ones that will be able to instruct that number that no man can count, how to wash his robes in your precious blood, by living by your every word, and not taking parts of you and casting you away, but taking you fully as you were giving yourself fully to our Heavenly Father. You never sinned once. You still never sinned. The sacrifices for sin will be going on forever because of our ignorance, not yours, and definitely not of our Father. But we do pray that you'll open up the ears of those that will hear these words, that they may see this letter was written personally to those that you have called out and chosen in these last days, that we may open these words up, and all who will apply their hearts and their minds and their souls and have a desire to seek you, I pray they may find them, that they may also read these words as they were written to us, to them, because it then becomes a personal letter to them of love. And we thank you for this, Yahshua. We ask this, and that Holy Spirit be upon this video. And we ask these things for your name's sake. We ask that it be done. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Thank you all for putting up with me. It says here in Matthew 24, verse 1, Then Yahshua went out and departed from the temple. Okay, so he departs from the temple. And his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. Oh, look how wonderful. Yahshua says to them, Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left upon another. They're all going to be cast down. Everyone's going to be thrown down. So they're out of the temple now. They're up on the Mount of Olives. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be? Well, what things be? Well, the stones being cast down. Okay, he's going to tell them in this. Now, this is a mixture for two generations. Okay, what he's going to say, because a lot of this the disciples also went through at that time, but it was a message as well for us in these last days. And I hope you'll be able to see this. If you can't, then you can't understand the letter. It's all right. But anyway, it's, just keep practicing, keep listening, and hopefully if you do it a few times, it will open to you. If you pray to our King to open these things up as I have asked already, it'll be open so you can see. But he's on the Mount of Olives. The disciples get him privately saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming when you return, for whatever term somebody wants to call it, rapture, or the proper thing called the resurrection, where the dead will be raised before the living are even changed in the twinkling of an eye, to then ascend into the clouds with our King. That's what they're asking. Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming, and of the end of the age? So then Yahshua answers them, take heed that no one deceives you. Many's going to come in my name deceiving. Let me go down here. You'll hear wars, rumors of wars. Well, shoot, yeah, man, the Romans came into Jerusalem and they knocked down stuff, man, and threw stones down. And I don't even actually know if that was the temple that was there. From what some researchers have said, is that it was basically a Roman garrison that stood there, but I don't want to cause any controversy. It has nothing to do with salvation, and others have shown where the actual temple would set someplace else in Israel, and I really don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't even care when the temple's rebuilt, if it is rebuilt. I know that everything that is actually going to take place is going to take place before this last generation passes away. So I'm going to focus on keeping these laws in the commandments instead of following rabbit holes to have our King look at you and say, I never knew you, get away from me, you who practiced iniquity. When he says all through these scriptures, and I'm showing you that you need to keep the commandments and the laws and trust in our King if you want salvation. Your righteousness must exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. And if it doesn't, you'll no wise make it into the kingdom of heaven. I brought that out in the last video. So anyway, our Messiah answered and said to them in verse 4, take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, and it's not in. That word in should have been against my name, saying I am, and then that word Christ, C-H-R-I-S-T. If you take a look that up in the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, you'll see it's not even a Hebrew name. It's Greek, okay? So this Christ is one of the gods of the Greeks. Has no Hebrew foundation. Means anointed. Well, yeah, their gods were all anointed. So he's not saying I am, and a lot of them are saying it, so they're still coming against his name, saying that they are this Messiah or anointed one, a preacher of them, collecting tithe, that will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, okay? Like it said, they came in, they tore stuff up. These things must come to pass, nation against nation. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Those things took place already. They're going to take place again. They're already starting, okay? And then it says in verse 9, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. And you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And that's exactly what took place for our King's name's sake. The disciples and Paul, and all the believers finally by the year 325 AD had been murdered off. And for the most part, just like with Stephen and Paul and our King himself, what was the reason? They was teaching against the laws of Moshe. But it said that they had false accusers come against them, which means when they said they were teaching against the law of Moshe being false, it meant our King was teaching and walking in every single word that Moshe had written. And I think it's yakin on John chapter 5 at the end of it. Either that or chapter 6, one or the other. But it says, if you do not believe the words that Moshe has written, then you don't believe me, because Moshe wrote about me. If you do not believe Moshe's writings, which is the laws and the commandments, he says, then you cannot hear my words. And if you can't hear these words, it's because you're not keeping the commandments, because you're a sinner, and our King never was. You can't practice sin and still have, salvation. So anyway, nation against nation, all these are the beginning of sorrows. That's verse 8. Verse 9, then they'll deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. This is going to take place again. It's already been taking place. Then many will be offended, will betray one another, hate one another, then false prophets, so on and so forth. All these different things on the rooftop. Please read on down there. Then he talks about, for the lightning here in verse 27. Verse 27. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. That's how he's going to appear. Everyone's going to see him. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. That's got a bunch of different prophecies that people have talked about. And then it talks about here, which is defining the difference between, well, it's actually for these last days, and not for that from before I told you beforehand. Immediately after the tribulation of those days. What days? He's showing his coming from what was being described as going to take place with the temple, all the way through until his coming, where some mistake is the rapture. Okay, some kind of an escape from all these things that are to come. No, all these things are going to are to come to pass, and it even speaks of those that are the elect's sake up here in, let's go to 24:22. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Yes, for my sake, the king is saying, the days are going to be shortened because I've been sick all my life. All I've done is suffer, and if I die, it's okay. But the thing is, he's speaking that the times are going to be so tough, even for the elect. Why ain't the elect going to be raptured? Because there is no rapture. I'm sorry, fellas. The things that's going to take place is the dead will be raised first when we see our King coming on a cloud, lightning flashing from the east to the west. And we're going to see him, and he's going to call forth the dead from the ground. And then those that are of his elect, the very few that are left alive, read Isaiah chapter 24. It'll tell you the earth is burned and few men left. There's not going to be a whole lot of people see our King return. And there's not going to be this taking you up before the dead are raised or anything. When our King comes, everyone's going to see him. It isn't that thing where planes and stuff's going to fall from the sky and kill innocent people. They could repent. No, it's not going to be like that. Please read the letter. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. This is going to take place before our King comes. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they'll see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He's going to send his Malachim. He tells you to learn this parable of the fig tree. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things, everything it says this last generation won't pass away till everything that was just spoken takes place. It doesn't say there's a rapture in there. It says you're going to see the sign of the Son of Man. And then he changes the thought. He already told you everything that's going to come to pass. He's coming on the cloud. And you're going to sit here and tell me that nobody knows when he's going. How did he tell you that? He tells you everything's coming before it. And yet you got everybody running out there into these prophecies trying to figure out when this rapture is going to take place. It's dead ends. It's rabbit holes. Please, people, wake up. Listen to what he's saying. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. End of that conversation. Now you know when the king came, and where did he ask up here? He says, saying, tell us, when will these things be? Well, he told you, when the temple would be torn down, all the stones thrown down. And when will be the sign of your coming? Well, he explained everything to the sign of the coming, and then these next two verses, he actually tells you the end of the age, when the heavens and the earth will be destroyed. And then from that point, you'll see here, he reiterates his coming and how he expects you to act when he gets here, before he gets here. Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Everything I just told you, even the sign of the Son of Man appearing and everything, all the tribes, that's when the Jews are going to say, oh, he was the one we were supposed to put our trust in. Oh my, he was the Messiah. How do you like that? And they're going to cry and they're going to weep. A lot of them will be spared, and some of them, they rejected the laws and such, they're going to be, well, read Revelations 22, 14, and 15. It'll tell you, that blessed will be those who keep the commandments, for they shall have right to enter the tree of life and enter therein to the kingdom. Okay, or that great city, but outside are the dogs and the whoremongers and the doctors and, the pharmaceutical administrators and everyone else are going to be on the outside there, the sinners. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. He's telling you all these things. Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away. Yes, heaven and earth is going to pass away. This isn't talking about his coming. He's going to have a 1,000-year reign before the heavens and the earth pass away. And when will they? Well, he says it right here. But my words will not by no means pass away, but of that day and hour. No one knows. What day, what hour? When the heaven and earth will pass away. Can you see that? Please tell me you do. Heavens and earth will pass away, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the Malachim of heaven, but my Father only. And another scripture says not even the Son. Then he goes on to elaborate on all the things before to bring back up to your mind not only the horrors, but how you're supposed to act when the horrors come, when this tribulation comes upon you. He says, but as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Well, how's he going to come? Lightning from the east to the west. He's going to come in a cloud. Have you seen it yet? Well, there ain't no rapture before that. You ain't getting off this earth before that. He's going to come down on a cloud. Everyone's going to see him. And there's going to be very few men left. Isaiah chapter 24, the earth will be burned and very few men are left. Most of them are going to be killed off in the war. There's going to be a lot of women, because we're going to have to repopulate the earth. And I'm not saying me. I'm saying because I'll be in a spirit form at that time. I'll already be, at the wedding supper with my bride. And my bridegroom as well. And what's going on here, our king is showing, is that in the days of Noah, as in the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. A lot are saying, these are the days of Noah, and I agree with it. For they'll be eating food, this, that, the other thing. Not, I should be down like this. Sorry about that. Okay, and they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So that's how our king is going to return to us. Very few are going to even hear his voice. compared to the numbers that were. And there's going to be a number no man can count that's going to come out in these last days. But by the time our King returns, people, please understand, there's going to be a lot of people dying. Even those that have the robes washed in blood of our King. Because you're going to have to prove yourself, and it may take your very life to do so. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's what the scriptures are saying. If you keep the laws and commandments, you'd rather have your head chopped off than to eat a piece of pork. It gets right down to it. It says in 1 Al-Yahnai chapter 3, read it for yourself, that those that are born of the Father, those that are his sons, and the brothers and sisters, and the daughters, read it. You can't sin. So you'd rather have your head chopped off, because if you eat the pork in order to stay alive, so you can be burned and few men left in the end anyway, you know, I mean, it's your choice. But, and I know these are very hard words, but I need you people to please wake up. The letter's very true. You can have protection from what's coming. Do it now. You know, before the 144,000 are sealed, please do it now. You won't have so much. You may not have to give your life. Who knows? Ay. I mean, I don't mind losing mine. They can come anytime they want and chop my head off, you know. I'd rather them not. I'd sure like to meet up with my bride before they take me. But these are facts, okay? And our King wants you to know it, and that's why I'm bringing these videos. But anyway, it talks, then 2 men be left in the field, 1 taken, so on. Know this, if the ruler of the house had known which hour the thief would come. Assuredly I say to you that he would make him ruler over all great things. Talking about, blessed is that servant whom his ruler, whom Yeshua has left, when he comes, will find so doing. What's that? Ruling over the household to give them food in due season. I'm doing that right now. It's due season. I'm giving you the food. I'm showing you how to read these letters. Just to cut down on the time, it took 5 hours to upload a 30-minute video the last time. So I want to stop this here, you know, but it also talks about the evil servant that says in his heart, my ruler has delayed his coming. Okay, there's a lot of people, because of false doctrines out there, time after time after time again, and they finally say, forget it, man, I'm tired of this. You know, even the Jesus they get tired of. And that's even a shame, because that's a lesser faith. But it's still a faith, and you can make it in the kingdom if you keep the laws and commandments, people. Please, you know, put your trust in our King like you say you do. But if you don't keep the laws and commandments, then, you know, you're pulling off our King's arm or his leg, and you're beating him with it, saying, you've got to accept me just the way I am. And no, he don't. But he does. He expects you to change. He expects you to do what you vowed to do, to follow him in all things. And he followed our Father. So in order to follow him, you have to also follow the Father. In fact, you got to go through the schoolmaster before you can even get to the King. And you can't get to the Father except through the King. It's just that simple. All those praying to God, all those praying to the Creator, your prayers are not being heard because you're denying the Son. So please consider these things. Listen to my prayer over again, you know, and you'll see an example how to pray. Our King was giving the example how to pray because he was still on the earth, and he was praying that way because he had not yet been, you know, having his life laid down for you and his blood shed. I want to show you everything. Please look at my other videos. I love y'all, and shalom.